On Christmas Day, when my mother tapped her fork against the good wine glass and announced I had to hand over $78,000 for my sister's wedding, or be erased from the family forever, I was already holding a secret. Folded inside my pocket was an email that proved she'd rejected a full offer to pay for the entire wedding months before she cornered me in front of 30 relatives. I let her finish her speech. I let my father rise and tell the room it was my duty. Then I walked into the cold with nothing but my coat and a single word: no. I'm Harper. I'm 33, and this is the story of the Christmas that cracked my family open and the 122 phone calls that came to break me. Growing up in Oakwood, a small town 30 minutes south of Charlotte, I knew the arithmetic of enough. Our house on Dogwood Lane had a chain-link fence and a dogwood tree that bloomed every April like a stubborn apology. My father, Hank, worked as a plumber. His hands always smelled of copper and PVC cement. My mother, Darlene, ran the register at Stitch in Time, a fabric shop on Main Street. She could name the thread count of any bolt in 3 seconds. We weren't poor, but there was no cushion, no vacations, no summer camps. Braces only when I was 15 and a payment plan appeared. What we had in endless supply was my mother's refrain, delivered as automatically as breathing. One day my girls will have the wedding I never had. That sentence carried 38 years of hurt. Darlene married Hank at 19 on a Tuesday in March at the courthouse, wearing the navy dress she'd worn to work the day before. 2 Polaroids in her nightstand drawer showed a scared young woman and a borrowed tie. No flowers, no photographer, no first dance. She carried that disappointment like a pebble in her shoe. And somewhere deep in the architecture of her resentment, she decided her daughters would redeem her. I became a nurse, not because my family pushed me. Nobody had gone to college, but because I watched a paramedic restart a child's heart in a gas station parking lot when I was 16. And I thought, I want to be able to do that. I put myself through UNC Charlotte, working night shifts at a convenience store off Highway 49. After I passed my boards, I landed in the EQ at Piedmont General, the unit where you learn on your shift whether someone is getting better or they aren't. I loved the work. I was good at it. And without noticing, I became the family's emergency call button. It started with picking up Mom's blood pressure medication from the Oakwood pharmacy every month because she refused to switch to a closer one 6 years, over 70 round trips. Then I handled Dad's taxes, teaching myself software and filing every April for 9 years, saving him thousands he would have lost. I was Grandma Edith's emergency contact. I drove 4 to 5 minutes in the dead of night when she fell or her oxygen alarm went off. I organized every holiday dinner, every Easter egg hunt, every Thanksgiving spread the turkey, the casseroles, the paper plates. I ended a serious relationship during the pandemic because I chose 12-hour EQ shifts over date nights. And my boyfriend finally said he couldn't eat alone anymore. I was 33, single, and the person everyone phoned when something broke. My family had begun to confuse my reliability with an unlimited line of credit. My sister Maisie, 6 years younger, lived in a completely different orbit. She worked at a boutique called Fern and Sage, selling $42 candles and linen trousers. She and Mom talked everyday reality TV, Saturday fabric store trips. I wasn't jealous. I simply didn't have the bandwidth. Then, Maisie met Liam Caldwell. Liam's family owned Caldwell Auto Group, a string of dealerships across the Piedmont. They were warm, understated money, and they embraced Maisie like a daughter. When Liam proposed on a sunset hike with a ring that caught the light like captured electricity, Mom wept. But those tears held something beyond joy. They held the hunger of a woman who finally saw her duver. At the engagement party, I watched her face shift from mother of the bride to director of her own long-delayed production. I should have paid closer attention. Instead, I refilled the punch bowl. By late summer, Mom had assembled a binder 3 inches thick, color-coded tabs. She laid it out over Labor Day weekend like a general presenting a battle plan. Venue: a restored barn with Edison bulbs and a ceremony meadow, $28,000. Florals: peonies and garden roses cascading from every arch and table, $12,000. A live band, not a DJ, because she'd heard a DJ at a cousin's wedding and declared it cheap, $8,500. A designer gown from a bridal salon in Charlotte, $6,200. 2 photographers, a videographer, custom invitations, calligraphy, catering for 200 guests at $90 a plate. The numbers stacked to $93,000. Dad quietly told me they'd saved $15,000. That left a gap of $78,000, and nobody said a word about who would fill it. The silence was a statement. The fixer would find the money. At Thanksgiving, Maisie cornered me in the kitchen while I was rinsing the roasting pan. Liam's parents offered to pay for everything, she said. Mom told them no. She said the family handles its own, and that you'd be helping with the costs. I shut off the faucet. You make good money, Harper, and you don't have a husband or kids. It's just math. Just math. As if my life were a spreadsheet with a vacant column labeled wedding fund. I set down the dish towel, grabbed my keys, and walked out without a word. A few days later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Ellie Caldwell, Liam's mother. We met at a quiet coffee shop in Ballantyne. She slid her phone across the table and showed me an email chain. On October 28, Ellie had written, "Warren and I would be honored to host the wedding. Please let us cover the costs as our gift to the kids." On November 3rd, my mother replied, "Thank you, but the family handles our own celebrations. Harper will be assisting with the expenses. No need for outside involvement." I read it 3 times, my skin going cold. 6 weeks before Christmas, Mom had already committed my bank account without asking, and had rejected a gift that would have freed everyone. She'd called the groom's own family outside involvement. I printed that email, folded it into a tight square, and slipped it into my scrub pocket. I didn't know when I would use it, but I knew a reckoning was coming. Christmas Eve, I loaded my car with a brined turkey, green bean casserole, and wrapped gifts: a cashmere scarf for Mom, a socket set for Dad, a pearl necklace for Maisie with a card that read for the bride. The little Oakwood house was crammed with 30 relatives, folding tables stretching into the hallway. I did what I always did, poured wine for the aunts, got Grandma Edith settled with a cushion near the bathroom, kept the sweet tea flowing. Yet I felt a heaviness, like barometric pressure dropping before a storm. Mom kept exchanging weighted glances with Dad. He'd nod and look away. Maisie twisted her engagement ring. Liam's knee bounced under the table, his plate untouched. Mom barely ate. She kept checking the clock. When the plates were nearly cleared, Mom stood, smoothed her blouse, and tapped her fork against the good wine glass, the one reserved for pronouncements. "Before pie, there's a family matter." She aimed her words at me like a spotlight. "As you all know, Maisie and Liam are marrying in June. Dad and I have saved $15,000, but the total cost is $93,000. We need the family to come together." She paused, then lobbed the grenade. "We're asking Harper to cover the rest." The room went silent. "You want me to pay $78,000? I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not asking," she shot back, voice rising. "This is what family does. Pay for your sister's wedding or consider yourself cut off forever." Then my father half stood, palms flat on the table, and his voice filled the room. "Your mother and I have discussed this. No one here disagrees. This is your responsibility." He swept his gaze across every aunt, uncle, cousin, and turned them into a silent jury. Aunt Joan stared at her lap. Uncle Ray examined his fork. Grandma Edith gripped her wheelchair arms, her jaw tight. But she said nothing. The only sound was the electric hum of the Christmas tree lights. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I folded my napkin, set it beside my plate, and said one clear word: "No." I took my coat from the hook, walked out into the 38-degree night, and sat in my car for 2 minutes, shaking too hard to start the ignition. Then I drove home, crying until my throat burned. The turkey I'd roasted was still on the table. The gifts I'd wrapped were still under the tree. I had carried love into that house, and carried out a single syllable. Before I crossed the county line, my phone began to light up like a pinball machine. By the time I reached my apartment, I had 14 missed calls. That was just the beginning. The next days blurred into a siege: 47 calls, then 63, 89, 94, 108. On New Year's Day, The tally hit 122 calls in a single 24-hour period. I logged every one in a spiral notebook, the same kind I used for patient vitals: date, time, caller, outcome. Mom's voicemails evolved. First fury: you humiliated this family. Then guilt: I raised you better than this. Then tearful repetitions of the ultimatum, including a quivering pay for your sister's wedding, or consider yourself cut off forever, that I could never bring myself to delete. Dad's messages were clipped. Call your mother. She's not eating. Maisie left sobbing voicemails. Then silence. In total, I saved 54 voicemails in a folder labeled documentation. I was an ICU nurse. When the truth is under attack, you document everything. In the middle of that chaos, two things kept me upright. First, the folded emails still tucked in my pocket. Second, a Tuesday morning in mid-January, Grandma Edith called. Her voice was thin, but fierce. Harper. I sat in that chair and didn't say a word. I've been scared of your mother for 30 years, and I'm ashamed. But you did the right thing. Don't let her shrink you to make herself feel big. I broke down, sobbing into the phone. She just waited, breathing steadily. When this is over, bring me oatmeal cookies and don't skimp on the raisins. Aunt Joan eventually organized a family meeting at Oakwood Community Church. The same 30 adults gathered in a fellowship hall with linoleum floors, fluorescent lights, a pot of chili on the counter, and a coffee maker older than me. Mom sat rigid, chin high. Dad slumped slightly behind her. Maisie's eyes were red. I walked in straight from a 12-hour ICU shift, still wearing navy scrubs that smelled of antiseptic. I wanted them to see the version of me who'd been holding lives together while they'd been leaving voicemails. Mom immediately launched. Harper knows what she needs to do. Just say yes, and this ends. I let her words hang in the fluorescent buzz. Then I did something I'd never done before. I told them exactly what I'd given. Mom's prescriptions every month for 6 years. I've driven to Oakwood to pick them up. Dad's taxes, 9 years of filings. Saved you over $7,000. Grandma Edith's emergency contact. I've been there at 3 a.m. 3 times this year alone. Every holiday dinner you've eaten, planned, shopped, and cooked by me, including the turkey Mom used as a stage for her ultimatum. I paused. I make $76,000 a year, which sounds like a lot until you subtract federal and state taxes, Social Security, Medicare. My take-home is about $52,000. Rent in Charlotte is $14,400 a year. Student loans because nobody helped pay for nursing school, $4,200. Car payment and insurance, $3,600. Groceries, utilities, phone, gas for all those unpaid trips to Oakwood, another $9,000. Grandma Edith's supplemental care items insurance doesn't cover. Nearly $8,000 over the last 2 years. After everything, I have about $1,100 left each month. No vacation fund. No savings cushion. No dentist in 2 years. Because the copay is $80, and $80 is the difference between filling my gas tank and not. I don't have a husband or kids because I've spent a decade being this family's unpaid support staff. So when you said it was just math, the math never added up for me, but I showed up anyway. Aunt Joan's eyes welled. Uncle Ray looked ill. The room had never heard these numbers. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the email, still creased and warm. I unfolded it slowly. Mom. On October 28, Warren and Ellie Caldwell offered to pay for the entire wedding, $93,000. A gift. No strings. On November 3, you replied, "Thank you, but the family handles our own. Harper will be assisting with the costs. No need for outside involvement." I read it aloud, then met her eyes. You decided I would pay 6 weeks before you ambushed me at Christmas. You rejected their generosity because accepting meant sharing control. This was never about pride, it was about power. The room detonated in whispers. Aunt Joan gasped, "Darlene, is that true?" Mom shot to her feet, trembling. "That's private." She shouted, "You made it public when you demanded $78,000 in front of everybody." I replied, staying seated. Then Dad's voice cut through. Barely audible, I knew about the email. I told her to say yes. She refused, and I was afraid of your mother. I should have protected you. He stared at a crack in the linoleum, and that confession hung heavier than any accusation. Maisie stood up, tears streaking her face. They offered to pay? And you said no? She stared at Mom as if seeing a stranger. The power had shifted completely. I refolded the paper and spoke to my mother. I love you. I love this family. But I will not be punished for saying no. I will not drain my future for a wedding that didn't need to cost $93,000. The answer was always no. You just refused to hear it from anyone except me. I turned toward the door. Grandma Edith, stationed near the exit, caught my eye and nodded once, a slow, proud dip of her chin. I kissed her forehead and whispered, Sunday. Oatmeal cookies. Extra raisins. Aunt Joan hugged me in the parking lot, crying. I should have spoken up at Christmas. You brought us here, I said. That matters. If you've ever had to draw a line with the people who were supposed to protect you, type I know in the comments. And if this story is hitting home, please hit like. It helps Tranquil Drama Stories reach more listeners who need to hear that walking away can be an act of love. After that meeting, the calls stopped. A week later, Maisie phoned, her voice small. I'm sorry for what I said at Thanksgiving. You were never a math problem. Liam's parents still want to pay. The wedding will be at the lake house. Will you come? I said I'd think about it, not to punish, but because healing needs space. In February, Mom called. Her voice was threadbare. Your aunt says I need to apologize. I'm sorry. Silence stretched. Then she added, I wanted Maisie to have what I never did. I thought because you're the strong one, you should carry it. I told her I owed the family love, not a wedding, and that I'd been giving love for years. She cried, the ragged, honest kind. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. The wedding took place in June at the Caldwell Lake House, with wildflowers in mason jars and a guitarist from a local church. Maisie wore a consignment gown that seemed made for her. I wore a lavender dress off a sale rack and did nothing but show up. As the sun set, Mom found me on the dock. Your hair's longer, she said, small, ordinary words that might one day rebuild something. Dad slipped me a card. I should have been braver. I'm trying. Grandma Edith caught the bouquet from her wheelchair and crowed. I've still got it. Here's what I know now. Family isn't an invoice. And love doesn't come with a due date. That Christmas, I said no, and it cost me 122 calls and 54 voicemails. But it bought back my life. If someone you're supposed to trust ever tries to charge you for belonging, remember, you can walk away and still return on your own terms later. If this story meant something to you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that no is a complete sentence. Subscribe to Tranquil Drama Stories so you never miss a new one. I'd love to read your story in the comments. Thank you for listening.